Annyeonghaseyo! Welcome to Afternoona Delight, where Leah, Megan, and Amy, romance novelists and your K-romance guides. So grab some dekboki and listen to your new favorite unnies.
Annyeonghaseyo! Yeah, hey, we're getting better at it. So, hi everyone. This is our third podcast of myself, Sarah, and Grace. As we start our little embryonic kind of network baby pod, Afternoona Asks. Right, so for those of you who don't know us, I'll just give a quick intro. So my name's Sarah. I'm a British Chinese K-drama fan, and I blog and post at Kdrama This on Instagram and Twitter, and on my blog, www.kdramathis.com. And I'm joined by Grace, who is Korean America and also a K-drama fan. And do listen to our first joint podcast for a longer intro into who we are, our K-drama tastes, and what we're trying to do with this pod. Thank you so much for those of you who have listened to our first episode, which has dropped, and reached out and told us that you really enjoyed it, and you sent us supportive messages. On behalf of myself and Grace, we're really grateful that you took the time to message, but also that you guys are seem to be enjoying the pod and are curious to learn more. So actually on that we invited, obviously, yay sorry and we invited you to send us lots of questions if you had them, and lots of you did, which is great. So first of all, just before we begin the rest of the pod, I just want to make a correction to something I said in the first pod when we were talking about how to pronounce Dongfang Qingchang's name from Love Between Fairy and Devil. And I had said that Tang is second tone and meant hide. And actually it's Tang, so it's first tone, not second tone. And it actually means sky. So together his name is Green Sky, so East Region Green Sky, which actually is more poetic than to hide. But so I wanted to say thank
it's pretty.
It is more pretty, yeah. So thank you to Pauline who wrote in and corrected me on that, and sorry guys for being lazy and not looking up the precise Chinese character when I was talking about his name. Thank you. So one of the themes that we picked up from the set of questions that we had, and I've got quite a lot of them as well for Grace, is about Korean language nuances. So, hey, the other thing that was quite funny was that people were listening to the pod apparently spent the next like 20 minutes practicing how to say Ji channel.
I love those comments, especially Megan at the DMV.
Yeah. What is the DMV for us that are not American?
The Department of Motor Vehicles, and there's a different one for each state.
Okay.
So
and what
it's
was
not
she
like
doing
a federal
there?
thing.
Okay, so you were like
I can't remember
registering a car or something.
but you go there to register
right.
a car or get renew your license, maybe things like that.
Right. So for those of you who don't follow the Instagram of Afternoona Delight, Megan basically posted that she was at the DMV listening to our podcast and getting weird looks because she kept laughing and practicing how to say G channel under her breath. So thank you, Megan. Thanks for listening to us while you're at the DMV. So we so what we did was that, like I said, we asked various people to email the pod, which you did, to ask questions, and we also threw out a more general thread in the Patreon to ask questions for this pod. So what we're going to do is run through some of those questions, as well as questions I've got, as well as things that Grace and I thought might be interesting to talk about. So I thought the first topic that we should speak about was about kind of naming conventions, right? And how we use terms to address people, because I think for me that's one of the key differences between Western and East Asian culture. And like pretty much everything, and it's like a running theme through our podcast, everything goes back to that old man called Confucius. So Confucian respect. So basically, I'm going to just boil it down. We will do a proper pod on Confucius at some later date, but for now, we'll just keep it relatively simple and just say, you basically can't call someone from an older generation their given name. It's completely not respectful. So in a family context, us Asian families will have lots of aunties and uncles and grannies and granddads that we're not actually technically blood related to, but they are people of an older generation. So either the same generation as our parents or older than our parents, and you have to address them accordingly. They're also people that are in our lives and gives us lots of unasked for advice, but that's also for another pod. They can call you by your given name because they are older than you, so they don't need to show you that level of respect. And you're also as soon as you meet them, you're supposed to address them in that way. That is also a mark of respect. You can't just go, hey. You actually have to use their name and say hello to them properly. So, and obviously, as we discussed in our first episode, in different environments, like in a workplace or at university or in a classroom or whatever, you would often call people by their relationship to you. But if they hold a position of greater rank than you, even regardless of their age. So, for example, if you are a pupil learning from a teacher, even if that teacher is younger than you, you will address them respectfully because they are your teacher and you are the pupil. So I was actually thinking about this, Grace. I like because obviously we're Asians navigating this kind of like Western Asian kind of cultural divide all the time. And for me, one of the biggest examples was, so when I got married, and I'm married to a white British man who I think I've said that before. So obviously my mother-in-law is white British. And in the culture in the UK is now a lot more casual, and so she was very happy for me to call her by her given name, but I didn't do it, right? So I was like, this is the woman that's going to be my mother-in-law. I can't just call her Anne. Like I just felt really, really like I was being really disrespectful. And so I actually said to her, is it okay if I actually call you Lai Lai, which is what Cantonese people use to call their, like, it's a slightly less formal word to address your mother-in-law. And luckily she was, in fact, not only was she fine with it, she actually thought it was quite cool and distinct. So she actually likes being called Lai Lai, and actually it's in her Instagram handle now. She's like so proud of it.
That's so cute.
It's really cute. But yeah, mother-in-laws, is, in case you don't know, are really important in Asian culture for the woman that's marrying into a male family. So as a wife, you marry into the male family, and in Chinese, your own family becomes in Cantonese, your ngoi ga, which literally means ngoi is outside and ga means family. So it's your outside family. And your own family becomes your husband's family. So she is my, she's the head of the matriarch or head of my new family. So I couldn't call her by her first name. And then also I think I've mentioned that I had a professor from Korea, but I also have them from China in my professional life. And again, in the work life, they use first names. So I actually work for my own boss. Himself is a professor, but he's also knighted in the British system. So he's actually a professor, sir. But he doesn't, he doesn't like to use, in fact, because I'm a Brit, basically the only time I ever call him Professor Sir is when I'm taking the piss out of him. Because that's what we do. That's what we do in Britain. Anyway, so we call him, generally I call him by his first name, and then the people that we work with, we all call each other by first names. But these East Asian professors, when they come, I have a real problem with calling them by their first name. Right. But then at the same time, I don't want to create a divide, because actually I think they quite like that they participate in our sessions and are called their given names, because they feel like they're part of the network, proper group that we're building. So yeah, it's one of those. I just thought it was interesting when we were discussing this topic, that it can be quite difficult. Sorry, and we will get to ones for all the Korean. I'm just like gabbling on about like Cantonese and Chinese, but I think there are kind of similar, aren't they, Grace?
Absolutely, yes.
We're gonna touch on some of the things that are similar with your sides. So I know in Cantonese, for example, we also have different names depending on if they are older or younger than your mum and dad, and if they're related to your mum or dad's side. It's super confusing. So, for example, I have a younger brother. He has kids, and they call my mum Mama, and they call my dad yeah, as their paternal grandparents. But my kids call my mum Popo and my dad Gong Gong, as they are my kids' maternal parents. Also, my kids call me Guma, which is your paternal aunt that is older than your dad. But if he was my older brother, then they would call me Gute, because I'm the paternal aunt that's younger than their dad.
Whoa.
It's really complicated. And it also means that, and also Guma is just like really, really proper Ajuma sounding. I was so dismayed when I realized that that's what they were going to call me, because Gute sounds like so much like cooler and hipper as an auntie. Anyway, the whole thing can get super, super complicated. So luckily for me and other family members that are relatively more relaxed, as soon as they get more distantly related, we just tend to switch to the English and just call them auntie and uncle, because it's so hard working out who's who. And also it's sometimes not age based. Like auntie and uncle can just be just a mark of respect. Like I actually have technically got cousins that generationally are the same generational line as me, so technically I don't need to call them aunties and uncles, but they're like my mum's age, so then I feel really weird not calling them auntie and uncle. So that's like another way to do it. Yeah. So do you guys have something similar?
Yes, we do. We have, all of those very specific names for relatives depending on which side of the family and how they're related, and whether they're older than our parents or younger also. And hearing you say Goma made me think like, oh, that sounds really close to the maternal the paternal aunt word for Korean is komo.
Oh.
So yeah, it does sound a little similar to me. Anyway, but so my family is not strict about it. And I think it's probably because the family members of my generation, me, my sister, and my cousins, we haven't been really great about learning and using Korean properly. So I think the older generation has just accepted our ignorance. My kids will call my sister Imo, which is the proper Korean title or name for a maternal aunt. But they just call all of my cousins, so the same generation as me, cousin in the American fashion. Although maybe they should call them like aunt and uncle in the same way that you. Anyway, we're not very consistent because we also use auntie and uncle for like our close friends. For our close friends whose kids are friends with our kids, so we say, hey, Auntie Melissa for the mother of the child who's friends with, our friends, our kids.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's kind of a mess. But when I was looking through the script earlier, I kind of had an epiphany about the maternal and paternal family stuff. Because it's pretty similar in Korean society that the woman marries into the man's family, and technically you're supposed to call your dad's side grandparents 할머니 and 할아버지, and your mom's side grandparents 외할머니 and 외할아버지, which I didn't know as a child because growing up I just called all of my grandparents 할머니 and 할아버지 no matter what side. This part about the way I learned from watching Korean dramas. Actually, there's a family drama called Five Enough, where like there's some drama between the two sets of grandparents. Like, oh, why are they calling so and so that when they should be calling them that? And I was like, whoa, there's a difference. But I did know growing up that my mom's side grandparents were called 외할머니 and 외할아버지, and my dad's side were called 친할머니 and 친할아버지, because if someone was confused about which 할머니 or which 할아버지 we were referring to, we needed to be able to specify. But I never really thought about it beyond that. And the reason for that is because it's based on Chinese characters, those wei and the chin. And I never learned any Chinese characters. Koreans call Chinese characters hanja, and I never learned any of that. But
yeah, because chin to me sounds like the Mandarin for chin, as in close to me.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, actually, I'm about to get to that, because I kept hearing the like words with that kind of prefix in Korean dramas as I got older. And so then I got the sense that there's this distinction between chin and wei to like kind of create this distance between like a woman who's married into a family and her own family, as well as like her children and her own family. For example, like I could see and hear the chin for paternal family, 친가, is the same chin that's in the word 친구. You know, have you heard the word 친구, like in business proposal where I forget her name.
Yeah, it's the cousin of the second lead.
She's like, I have no chingu. Anyway, so that chin is the same. And then the wei for maternal family, I kept hearing in like words like 외계인 for alien, like from, My Love from Another Star. 외계인 is the same wei sound. And then 외국인, which is the word for foreigner. So then when you said that a woman's own family becomes the outside family, it like all clicked into place.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's so messed up. It's like your own family becomes like alien.
Yes.
Anyway, and it seems like the Chinese character for weiga is the same as the one that you wrote up above, like you wrote up above in the script. It's the same one. So
yeah, it's the same, and it's the same it's all coming together because handily Grace has also put the hanja into the script, so I can actually read it as well, because I can't read Hangul, but I can read Korean Chinese characters. So yeah, the hanja that you've written for Alien, which is ngoigayan, is also right, and the same as an alien, and then also ngoigotyan, which is foreigner, wagoran. So it's also it's like similar as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for helping make those connections. My brain was like, woo, fireworks.
You're welcome. I'm glad. But yes, it's all back down to Confucius. He is the reason why.
He is the reason.
He is the reason.
We'll explain more later.
He is the reason. Right, cool. So I'm going to go on to some of the other questions that we've got. So we've got some really interesting questions. So shout out to our fellow patron, Claudia, who I just met. So I had just a tangent. I recently went on a business trip to Washington, D.C. and I don't know anyone in Washington, D.C. So there was one evening before that I had free because a work dinner that we were going to have got moved. Anyway, I put a shout out on our Patreon and said, is anybody around in DC and fancies meeting up with me to show me like a restaurant in DC that's good to go to and talk K-dramas? And I was so lucky because 4 other people were free that evening and made the time to come to DC. So I want to thank you guys for your company. I had the best night, like just one whole night. I mean, I think because you guys, you've had like mini like army meets, right? But I have not met people I could just speak to about K-dramas for like an entire evening at all. Like I just don't have people in my real life who want to talk obsessively to that depth about K-dramas like the entire night. So I had such a good evening.
That's
anyway,
awesome.
So shout out to you guys. And so Claudia asked a question for Grace: how to interpret oppa? I've seen it defined as brothers, but it's clearly also different from oraboni. Does it really mean boyfriend, which often is the implication in K-dramas, or what other Korean words are poorly or differently translated in dramas?
So oppa is not just defined as a biological older brother, but also is someone who a girl or a woman feels close to and who is older than that girl or woman. So an oppa can be an older brother from another mother for a girl or a woman. And if you're a boy or a man, the corresponding word would be hyung. There was a pretty robust discussion about the meaning of hyung after Squid Game came out, because the Sang-woo character builds a relationship of trust with the Ali character early on by telling Ali to call him hyung. And this is a little spoiler alert, because afterwards he turns around and kind of does Ali dirty later in the series. Netflix had translated Hyung into Sang-woo for non-Korean audiences, so just his given name. So if you didn't recognize that term, you lost a big chunk of this nuance. Because when Sang-woo invited Ali to call him Hyung, he was telling Ali that he thought of Ali as a close friend and even like a younger brother from another mother. That Sang-woo was someone who would look out for Ali and protect him. That's what he was communicating. So again, the spoiler alert again for those of you who haven't watched Squid Game, the knife in the back later was a much more devastating betrayal if you understood those nuances of the word hyung. And then,
I see.
Yeah, so one of our patrons, Kate, also pointed out this Netflix practice of translating, 언니, oppa, hyung, and nuna into the characters' given names instead of using those Korean words. And I think the reason that they do that is that they are trying to convey the level of closeness and casualness from a Western point of view, where we would, because, in the West, we would call our friends, our close friends, by their given names. We wouldn't call them Miss something or Ms. something or Mr. or, other kind of forms of address. Yeah. And then, so the other part about whether oppa is a word that can be used to address a boyfriend or husband, the answer is yes. That is not usually a mistranslation. Since oppa can be used by a woman with an older man that she has a close and trusting relationship with, that naturally extends to romantic relationships. So you will see women calling their boyfriends and husbands oppa sometimes. And Koreans are also totally fully aware that this broad usage of oppa is confusing. So in a drama, you may see a situation unfold where there's a misunderstanding in one direction or the other, where a close older guy is assumed to be a biological brother, as well as other ones where a biological older brother is assumed to be in a romantic relationship with the girl or the woman. Case in point, in Go Back Couple, the secondary couple has a big misunderstanding when the guy in the couple sees that the girl has several oppas saved on her cell phone. And he's like,
yeah, I remember this.
Oh my goodness. How many oppas does she have? Oh my goodness. But it turns out that they were all her biological oppas. So
actual oppas.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, to clear things up, the question is sometimes asked whether this older guy is a chin oppa or not. And there's that new vocabulary again. Chin means biological brother. And as far as I know, oraboni is only used to refer to a biological older brother. But it's like an old word. So you'll pretty much only see it used in sageuk or historical dramas, or when very elderly women refer to their older brothers.
Or in Goblin, when Yoo In-na's character finally remembers who Gong-yu, the goblin, was. And she said, didn't she?
That's true. But I think she was addressing him as her realized ancient self.
Yes,
right. So
yes, that's what I meant. But in a modern setting. So that was
right,
like, I
right.
recognize
Yes,
you. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. But you know, that communicated that she remembered that he had been her brother long ago during a
Yeah.
period when that word would have been used. Yeah.
So it was good context setting.
Yeah,
In one
yeah.
word. In one word. Yeah.
Exactly.
So and then is the use of Nuna and Uni similar?
Yes. So Nuna is the word for an older sister to a boy or a man, or an older girl or woman with whom that boy or man has a close relationship. And Ani is an older sister to a girl or a woman, or an older sister from another mister. I mean, sorry, an older sister from another mister for like unrelated women or girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically we shouldn't really be calling them Nunas because we're women. We should
Yeah.
actually be calling them. Actually, well, I think I'm definitely older than Megan and Leah, so I shouldn't even be calling them either.
Yes, but I always thought of it as they are Nunas to all of the unfortunately way younger, wonderful male actors who play our, you know, our leading men.
That's true.
Dramas.
Yeah, it's they're Jang Ux Nunas. No, VJ Ux Nunas.
Yep, that's right.
So so my other question, that led me on to thinking like, so for people that are using your given name, are they people that are born the same year as you allowed to use your given name? Is that how it works, or is there a different rule?
So you can use someone's given name if they are around the same age or younger than you, if there's no other title that better fits the context. But you can't call a person by only their given name unless you are on such close terms that you would use informal language with low politeness level. It's called 반말. So using my example from our intro episode, I can call Sarah by her given name, but I would probably need to add she, Sarah she, because we're not like bosom buddies yet.
Oh.
I mean, yeah.
We've not actually met in real life.
we haven't. And that's because we are around the same age. Yeah, but I wouldn't use 반말 to her quite yet. You know, in like if we were in a like some kind of relationship in Korea, that we wouldn't have reached the point where I could use 반말 to her.
Got it. Well, I mean, because like there's that thing, right? So Crash Landing on You, she uses Lee Jong-wook's she all the way through the drama, right into like totally into the later episodes. And so for you as a Korean speaker, does that sound like, because obviously, like, I mean, they didn't translate it in Netflix this way, but I thought if they did and just made it Mr. for the whole drama, that would just sound really like, you know, this is the love of your life and you're still calling him this name. Like, to you as a Korean, did that sound like totally natural to you? And
well, it doesn't sound unnatural because it all kind of depends on the couple, and like the level of formality that they find comfortable. So yeah, like our patron Lorna asked if we could explain the formal versus informal language, and how viewers differentiate, and then how couples really keep up like the formal language, you know, how long they do it for. And it's actually a question that I can answer by also answering one of Leah's questions, which is what the uses and nuances are of the different ways people say I love you in Korean. And so it largely has to do with a feature of Korean language called speech levels. And unfortunately, it's pretty complicated, and you probably won't get the same answer if you ask two different native speakers. But sort of in a nutshell, this is kind of my understanding, which one of the users on hinative.com helped me out with. So there's like formal versus informal. And then there's different levels of politeness. So there's higher levels of politeness and lower levels of politeness. And then the formality is also higher levels of formality and lower levels of informality, because it's not just two. It's not
There's lots of different levels.
There's lots of different ones. And there's also like specific vocabulary that you use when you're addressing someone who is like an elder, someone who you need to use honorifics for. But when you take like I love you, 사랑해 is low formality and low politeness. So you would use it with a same age friend, someone younger than you, your children, your lover, or boyfriend, girlfriend, wife or husband, spouse, lover or spouse. Sorry, that's gender neutral. 사랑한다 is a higher level of formality than 사랑해, but it's a low politeness level, same low politeness level as 사랑해. 사랑해요 is a low level of formality, but it's a higher level of politeness because you hear the 요 at the end.
Yes.
And 사랑합니다 is a higher level of formality and a higher level of politeness. So that those are the kind of like the two things that you have to control for. And that doesn't necessarily capture the nuances of why certain language might be chosen, because language choice is kind of more a matter of like an individual's decisions about their word choices. Because like the reason this came up with Leah is that apparently Suga says 사랑한다 instead of 사랑해 or 사랑해요. To like Army, when he's addressing Army, he says 사랑한다, or to other people too, his fellow members. And according to my mom, 사랑한다 is more determined than 사랑해. Right. And then another user on the High Native site said that 사랑한다 is more declarative and solemn, a way of saying I love you. Yeah, sometimes it's like a matter of intention, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, and then like within a couple, like the level of formality might have to do with the tone of an occasion, like where they are.
Okay, yeah.
What's happening at that time, or it could have to do with like the era that they grew up in. So older couples might be more formal to each other than younger couples. Or it could be used to be sarcastic, or as Lisa, one of the members of our Army chat, pointed out, it could be used to be like erotic, like like a, it's a role play type thing,
Right.
So it all kind of depends on context, like the person's identity, as well as like the situation and the setting and stuff like that. So the other thing is you'll notice a totally different level of formality for historicals. Like in 사극 dramas, they don't say 사랑해요. They say 연모합니다, or something like that.
Noticed that. I noticed that.
Yeah. So they like say that, and it means to have affection for, or to love or long for someone of the opposite sex. Go ahead.
Again, the Youngmo sounds to me a little bit like Youngmo in Cantonese.
Oh,
So we're probably going to go and find it's the same hanja / Chinese characters
right,
again.
right.
But yeah, to Yomo is to admire someone, to respect and to adore them. So it's not just love, it's like actually it conveys a little bit more like adoration and respect. And so
Oh,
I've recently finished Our Blooming Youth, which was the Seguk starring Park Sik, and it was him as a crown prince. And I remember him saying this, and obviously the translation was "I love you," and I, recognized that it wasn't saranghe. But yeah, it did make me think, oh, is that another one of those words that's like based off of the Chinese characters?
yeah, I bet it
Yeah,
is. I bet you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know a whole lot about the level of formality of the language used in saguks, but it was familiar to me before I started watching saguks because it's a similar level of formality as you hear in church. And then when I looked it up, I found that that's like it's an archaic language usage, but
Yeah.
currently people still use it like in modern times when they are like talking to a deity. So
Okay.
if you go into a church and they're praying and they're
Yeah.
speaking to God, then you will
Yeah.
hear some of this language even in the modern day.
Ah.
Yeah, it's much more complicated. I don't know much about it except like a couple of the phrases that are common, like 통촉하여 주시옵소서, 전하, or like 상은이 만극하옵니다. Like I
Mida.
noticed, I
Yeah,
noticed that they both have this op, like 시옵소서 or 하옵니다. So
yeah,
that's a sound you can listen for to see
yeah.
like how they're using this formal language. But
Um,
yeah,
yeah, there's one scene in, have you seen Moon Lovers? Have you
I
seen,
haven't. I haven't because
oh, you haven't? Yeah.
I haven't
Well,
like
so
found the streaming service that I
the
can
way
use.
to see
Yeah.
it, yeah. Well, so the TLDR is Leah loves it. It's one of her favorite dramas, and I didn't like it that much, and it's not one of my favorite dramas. But one of the things is like it's a time travel drama, and one of my criticisms of it is that it's a time travel drama that doesn't work very well. So the heroine is kind of supposedly time traveling all the way back to the Goryeo period, but she doesn't really seem to need to adjust much. But anyway, the one time when she actually kind of, it's quite funny, and it's the modern thing is used as a joke, is when she suddenly is told to be really respectful towards the crown princesses and kind of beg for her life, and she just gets down and it like kind of reenacts this like kind of cycle kind of scene, and just goes and uses this phrase, the one that you just said, like "Mangalamida," and she just like, and she's obviously just taken the phrase because she's never heard it. She's just heard it in Seiguks, and she's just using it in the Goryeo period, and that was
Oh,
quite
that's
funny.
so funny. That's really funny also because when I was like looking up some stuff about the like Tagalog language, I like stumbled upon this article where they were like, they didn't actually have all the ministers line up and in unison say "통촉하여 주시옵소서" or whatever. Like how would they even coordinate that so that they could do it all together? Like this is an artifact of like Korean dramas and cinema, like
Oh,
of the past few decades. They decided that they're going to do it like this, apparently
yeah,
because it's more like dramatic.
dramatic.
It's a better scene than like a minister like being like, oh, just like individually approaching the king. It's like it's much more dramatic to have them all in unison, say say the phrases.
It
Yeah,
is true, that is more dramatic. Oh, that's
yeah.
so interesting. Yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully that all made sense and I didn't make it more
That
confusing.
was really interesting. I mean, God, it just makes anyone out there who's learning Korean, like, kudos to you. But like all of these different levels, I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. come and learn Chinese. We don't have that many levels.
Oh, that's so interesting because I was curious about that. Since everything is like based in Confucianism and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I wonder if Chinese has all of this stuff too.
I think probably like when we still have different levels of formality for language and things like that, but I don't think there's so many different, because you have the levels of formality plus the levels of politeness, and then you could choose different form, like it's a mix and match thing, right?
Right.
Whereas I think it's a bit more set in Chinese. Like you might just be, if you're in a formal setting, you just might use some more formal language. If you're more informal language, you wouldn't necessarily pick one set and interchange with the others.
Yeah.
And
Mix and match is very confusing.
Yeah. And then obviously because of communism, everybody became 同志, like 同胞, like just everyone's a comrade. The language got flattened, as part of communist ideology. So that also helped to kind of change Chinese language. Yeah. And then in Cantonese, we're well known for being quite rude anyway. So like our language is generally quite coarse and quite casual. Sorry, and I'm saying that as a Cantonese, don't come at me. I'm saying that, I'm embracing my Cantonese. I'm saying that we are well known for being quite brash.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, like the last bit about how to recognize like what levels of formality and politeness the characters are using in modern dramas. Pretty much, you're just listening for the yo. And sometimes you will hear the characters kind of playing with that, like either if they're messing with someone or trying to throw someone off balance or like just being playful. Sometimes they will start off saying panmal and then like wait a couple beats and go yo. And the way that I've seen that translated is that like in the English, they'll just add sir, which is really weird because it's not sir or ma'am.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's how you indicate that belatedly you're throwing in some politeness and formality.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen this happen in multiple dramas. So you might notice it at some point.
Yeah, I think I have. Often when it's like, I don't know, it's like the plucky heroine who's like really kind of like got attitude and stuff, and then is in some kind of environment where she's got to be like a bit more formal and kind of keeps forgetting to be formal.
Right. Yeah.
Or like the hero is like her boss or something, and he keeps like saying like, I am your boss. Let's draw the line.
Right.
And she's like, sure thing, yo.
Right. Yep, that's exactly it.
Right. So I had another question as well. So romanization, there seems to be different ways to write the same sound in English. Like, like on my drama list, there's always like these different ways of writing everybody's names or writing the different titles. Mm-hmm. So is there not a standardized way of romanizing Korean sounds? Because in Mandarin we've got which I think I mentioned before, but pinyin, which came with the Chinese communists, and they standardized all of the Chinese sounds, and they're not that many, but they standardized all of them so that they all have exactly the same spellings.
Okay, yeah. So there is actually a standardized way of romanizing Korean. It's called the revised romanization of Korean. The problem is that it was only released to the South Korean public in 2000, and before that there was another system that was in place that was published in 1939 when Korea was still under Japanese occupation, and that's called the McCune-Reischauer system.
Right.
And then also Koreans have been emigrating to countries with Latin alphabets since before any recognized romanization existed. And even after there was, any kind of standardized romanization, there wasn't exactly a lot of rigor applied by individual like immigration agents or like individual Korean immigrants who are like opening shops or something like that. And then on top of that, North Korea still uses a romanization based on the McCune-Reischauer system.
Yeah.
So while, you know, the South Korean government controlled things like names of places, streets, etc., and a lot of larger companies and institutions have adopted the official revised romanization, individuals all over Korea and the world may not have. And then also businesses that have brand recognition predating the change may not have changed the spelling of their names. Like Hyundai, for example, is not spelled correctly under the revised romanization, and Samsung is not either. If anyone knows Kyochon chicken, that's also the older romanization. And then because it's really hard to romanize certain sounds, even those of us who know the official romanization rules might choose not to use them for whatever reason. For example, when I spelled out my kids' Korean middle names for their birth certificates, I relied on my own sense of what an English speaker looking at the romanization would probably say, instead of relying solely on the revised romanization. So that's why it's so confusing, because people are not like necessarily super on board. We don't have like an authoritarian government telling us you have to spell it this way.
Yeah.
So
no, that makes sense. Yeah.
So everyone's gonna kind of take liberties
Got it.
with that.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, having said that, we have pinyin, because pinyin is obviously for Chinese, the People's Republic of China, but Taiwan uses an older romanization system as well, and theirs is Wei Giles, so it's always obviously probably white men giving their names giving their names to romanization systems. But like in Taiwan, their names will be romanized in a different way, generally using Wei Giles, and then in Cantonese it's again romanized in a completely different way. So I had the same thing, because my children have, so I gave them Chinese first names because they've taken my husband's surname as their English name, so I wanted them to have names that reflected their actual full cultural makeup.
Nice.
And again, when I came to choosing their names, I had an eye to like what way can I romanize their names that means they're not going to get teased, that it means they're not going to turn into some silly word, and but still be approximately what their name is in Cantonese. So so I've actually been a little bit too successful, because my little girl says it in the English way rather than in the Cantonese way, so I keep having to kind of like say, like, if your name is actually said this way, rather than anyway.
I mean, but at least she doesn't have to have that conversation with all of the kids who are mispronouncing her name. I mean, as much, like, because I feel bad for kids like that. Anyway, because at some point you give up, like, trying to correct people, and you just kind of, and that's sad too.
With it.
Yeah.
It's true. Well, even my surname, so I'll say my surname is Chung, because that's just the accepted way that you say my surname,
right?
But actually in Cantonese it's Chung, which sounds kind of like nothing like Chung, but for ease, all of us just use that, right? We're just like, this is the way you say it, like, like, so one of the most famous Chinese actors that sadly died, that I mentioned in the first episode, because he's often referred to in Korean dramas, but Leslie Chung, his name is Jung Gotwin, but he would, we would all just use that as the way you pronounce our surname. It's one of the most numerous surnames, and it's one of the top 10 surnames in China.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. So moving on then, so there was another question this time, again from the patron, from Kate. People seem to say names differently. Is it according to closeness? So for example, Dongbek in Camellia, Yongshik seems to be saying Dongbeshi rather than Dongbeki, which everyone else says.
So yes, people do say names a little differently according to closeness, and according to, a mutual, basically, agreement or at least an understanding to speak in Panmal. So this is one I actually had to do some research, some more research on, because I always thought that like E and and ya and stuff were ways of making a person's name kind of more endearing, like almost like making a nickname. Like I thought it was like saying Gracie instead of Grace. But actually, they are parts of speech that you can use in certain situations. So saying a name plus a or ya is done to get someone's attention, to call out to them, to address them. So you would say, you know, 동백 a, if you were talking to them and you are on terms where you speak 반말 to each other.
Right.
And you would say 동백 이 if you were talking about that person, like in the third person,
Right.
to like maybe to someone else. Although often, you know, like with children, sometimes you would use it when you're talking to them, but you're saying their name to them. So 동백이 would be like, 동백이는 뭘 먹고 싶어? Like, so what does 동백이 want to eat?
Yeah.
You might say it like that. And that's the situation in which it sounds like you're making a nickname with the E, but actually you're addressing that person in the third person, even though you're like talking to them.
Okay. So actually, while we're on names, are there some names that you can tell a female or ones that you can tell a male?
Yes, there are some names that are more clearly male and some names that are more clearly female, but you know, they don't have to be. It's not like a rule. And sometimes, just like in English, people will name a girl a boy's name like on purpose to, you know, like for it to be striking or whatever, and vice versa. And there's also names that are clearly like in between. They're like AC/DC names. So like, for example, when my mom picked my son's Korean name, the second syllable she chose was Jun. And she told me that Jun means handsome. So like Park Seo-jun's name ends in Jun, and that is a masculine name because it's handsome, specifically, not like attractive, but handsome. But like, for example, Kang Haneul has a neutral name. Haneul means sky, and almost 2/3 of the Haneul's born in the last 15 years have been, you know, assigned female at birth babies. And my name Eunhae is feminine because it means grace, which is, you know, often a trait associated with women. So yeah, it depends on what each syllable means. But like, then again, people just break the rules all the time too. So like just for fun, you know, why not?
Hey, do you know, coincidentally, it's actually only just occurred to me that the Chinese character that my mum picked for the second half of my Chinese name is Yi, which is Grace.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. But then like around about in my 20s, she decided to change it. And she actually said, like, I picked it so that, you know, you could be graceful, but it didn't work. Classic Asian mom, like smackdown, right? She's like, it didn't work. So I'm changing your character to a different character that's going to be more lucky for you. So she changed it into like a completely different character.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness. Wait, so was your Chinese name not romanized and put into your legal name?
It was. Yeah. So it's a homonym. So it's said exactly the same way in exactly the same tone. It's just a different written character.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's still so my Chinese name is Ga Yi. So the Yi is still the same. Still said Yi. Not that obviously romanized cares about the tone, so it could be a totally different, you know, Yi. But yeah, it's actually the same tone, same sound. It's just a different luckier character because apparently the grace didn't work on me.
It didn't work on me either, and my name is Grace like multiple times because my English name is Grace, my Korean name is Grace, and then apparently if you break my Korean name into the two like Hanja, characters, each one apparently is also
means
kind of
grace.
great, like
triple grace.
Yep.
That is so funny. So the Learn Korean section, especially learning how to say our favorite actors or actresses' names correctly, was quite a popular part of our podcast, our first podcast. So I just wanted you to repeat, for the benefit of those of us who are still learning Korean, how to say Park Seo-joon's name correctly, and obviously Leah's favorite oppa, Kang Han-woo's name properly. And I've said them deliberately like in an English westernized way.
So it's Park Seo-joon. Park Seo-joon.
Park. So you'd actually take out the R from the park. So it's not park.
There is no R.
Car.
There's no R, and it's like a sound between a B and a P. So I've seen it romanized as BAK before. Same name. Same name romanized as BAK. Park Seo. It's like kind of like S apostrophe HUH. Seo. Because it's that aspirated thing. Seo.
Okay. So Park Seo.
Seo-joon.
Seo-joon.
Park Seo-joon.
Okay. Yeah, we've all been totally saying that wrong.
Actually, this was one of the first things that I like emailed the Nunas about. I was like, it's not Seo. It's not Seo. It's more like SUH. But yeah. And then Kang Ha-nul. Kang Ha-nul. That vowel sound, like somebody's asked me about it before, or somebody's asked somewhere before, and then I volunteered myself to explain. But the way that you could remember this vowel sound, the EU vowel sound, is, you know that song that goes war, huh? What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. So that huh is that sound. Because they don't go huh or who, they go huh. And it's that EU is
Kang
Ha-nul. Kang Ha-nul.
That was hard.
Very good. Yeah, it's hard. that one's yeah.
Right, great. Thanks for that, Grace. So we can practice it. So just once again, both the names, so we can go away and practice them.
Yes. Park Seo-joon and Kang Ha-nul. Park Seo-joon, Kang Ha-nul.
Great, thank you. Right, we're all gonna go away and practice that, regardless of whether or not we're trying to go and get our vehicle licensed or not.
Since we were talking about romanization a bit here, before we move on to the next part, I kind of wanted to touch on Koreanized English words. Because this is like confusing, I think, for a lot of people, because they hear the English word, but it's then used in a way that is unfamiliar, like fighting or fighting, or some people even say fighting if they can get their F pronunciations going well. So we hear it as English speakers and we're like, okay, they're like fighting. It's like, something like that. But in Korean, it really is used like as a way to cheer people up or to cheer them on. So it's like, when they translate it as cheer up or let's do it or we can do it, these are all pretty accurate translations of fighting or fighting, because they're basically words of encouragement, words to give strength. So then you see it used in a lot of different situations. And then another example like this is 멘트. So 멘트 apparently is a shortened form of comment or announcement. And then So I usually have seen this applied to short, thoughtful remarks or speeches, and a lot of like, K-pop idols will give mente in the middle of their concerts at some point.
Yeah.
So like we might not necessarily like recognize it as like, oh, these are some remarks, right? But that's what mente means, and it comes from English, and it actually is sort of related still, but there's that. And then the last one that I thought was interesting is some. So some, yeah, you've heard like some 타는 중 or something like that in dramas before. Even if you don't remember that, you have heard it. Because some is like, it's short for something, and some is used in Korean as to describe like the beginning stages of a romantic relationship or non-relationship, where there's like, there hasn't been a conversation about dating yet, and like nobody has defined that relationship yet, but something is happening. Something is happening.
Yeah. I think I have seen that. Yeah.
Yes. So, you're flirting, there's excitement, there's chemistry, but there isn't a defined relationship yet. And that's called 썸 타는 중. In the process of doing something. Yeah.
Right. So back to the questions then from the patron. How is the J sound pronounced? Sometimes it sounds different. And what about something like shin, S-I-N? Is that pronounced with a sh, like shin or sin?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the J sound is pronounced like we just did it, chun. But there's that aspiration. So you start with the j, just like the J sound, but it's like breathing H-O-O-N after, like smushing H-O-O-N in right after J. So it's chun, like you there's some breath coming out. Chun.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how the J sound is pronounced. And shin is pronounced with like an SH. And I had to think about this for a while because it is true that sometimes that letter, the letter that sounds like S is called shiot. And that letter is sometimes pronounced like an S, and sometimes it's pronounced like an SH. And it's because the consonants in the Korean alphabet are, they often sound different based on what vowel is next to them. All of the vowels come in pairs. And the second vowel in each pair has like a y sound, like a Y or a y sound added to the first vowel sound in the pair. So like there's 10 single vowels in the Korean language. There's lots of like multiples also, which is totally complicated. But the single vowels are a, ya, ya, o, yo, u, yu, e. And for the shiot, or the S sound, that y sound makes it sound like a sh instead of like a s. So if I put a shiot next to all of those vowels, it would sound like sa, sha, so, sho, so, sho, su, shu, su, shi. So like in each of those pairs, you can see how it sounds like an S with when there isn't that y sound, and it sounds like a sh when there is. So that's the best I could come up with.
No, that's very helpful. And I hope those of you who are at that level of their Korean learning will find that.
Yeah, and I think it actually makes sense because it's really hard to smush the S sound next to a Y sound. Like you can't do very, like that's two sounds now if you go So then if you smush them together, it's sh.
Yeah. So probably a little bit like, so my experience of when I was watching C dramas is that I end up sometimes getting a bit distracted by looking at translations of the subtitles rather than just enjoying the drama. So do you find sometimes that you kind of like get lost a bit, like you think, the way they translated that was really bad, or the way they translated that was really clever? Like, are there things that you find that the translators are having to do kind of extra time to try and make it more understandable for those who are just reading the subtitles?
Yeah, definitely both ways. Because like, puns and idioms and like turns of phrase, I feel like they tend to be pretty hard to translate across any two languages, not just like Korean and English, but like, Spanish and German or whatever, So I think in dramas, Korean dramas, sometimes the humor in the original Korean wordplay gets lost. Vicky tends to do a better job of explaining what the phrase is and why it's funny. But I've also sometimes been pleasantly surprised when Netflix translators have successfully found like a pun or idiom in English that conveys a similar meaning or vibe as the original Korean pun or idiom. And it doesn't happen a whole lot, but like it happens sometimes, and it's cool to see like, oh yeah, that's a similar phrase, that's a similar meaning. And then on the other side, sometimes, I definitely think, oh, they didn't quite translate that right, and something was lost in the translation. And then actually, this is a really rare thing, but a striking recent example of a translation that made me stop short wasn't a mistranslation at all. Like they got the meaning right, but I thought it was a missed opportunity. Because for those of the listeners who watched Peak Time, they may remember the judges telling contestants that they killed it while ripping a piece of paper. Well, the literal words that they were saying were tore it. And this is a rare instance in which there is an identical turn of phrase in English. Like saying someone tore it up is very similar in meaning to saying they killed it or knocked it out of the park. And so I kept being disappointed that the translator didn't say, you tore it up, instead of you killed it, because they were literally saying, 찢었다, which is you tore it up. What a missed opportunity. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that gets my brain going while I'm watching, which, I think it's pretty fun. Do you like it, or is it distracting for you?
No, I really like it. Especially with C-dramas. Obviously, it's mainly in Mandarin because I don't generally watch Hong Kong dramas anymore. But if anyone out there is listening and can rec me a really good one, I'm up for my own native Chinese. But yeah, because I'm not a native level speaker of Cantonese, like I'm fluent. I mean, sorry, not a native level speaker of Mandarin. So I'm fluent, but I'm still kind of like learning how to get it better all the time. So I actually quite enjoy it. But then obviously sometimes it bugs you because your brain is kind of working on stuff that it shouldn't be. It should be like, for example, in Love Between Fairy and Devil, I kept getting distracted because the translation into the English was correct in terms of its meaning, but the English words that they were using, especially the vernacular, was all really wrong. Because I'm a real fan of like historical dramas, and I'm quite particular about the kind of language that gets used in historical dramas. Like, there's always a fine line between making it accessible to modern day audiences but still keeping a feel for the period. So they were like translating, like in the beginning episodes when she kept kind of calling Dongfang Tingtang different names. She would they would translate it as you jerk, or like tell them to like, scram or something. And it's like we just wouldn't use those words in a historical context, right? Like there are better words to use.
Yes, absolutely.
So sometimes I wish they would just like my brain would switch off and stop like simultaneously translating. But yeah, on the most part it's fun.
Yeah.
Right, so that's the end of our podcast. Thank you, Grace, for being our kind of Korean teacher and answering lots of our questions from the Patreon. Thanks to those who submitted questions. Again, if you've got any more questions, we're happy to do future episodes to cover more topics. Please email the Afternoona Delight podcast on their socials at Afternoona Delight Podcast, or on their email, which is afternoonadelightpodcast@gmail.com. So for a future episode, we'll also cover Chinese language. So let us know if you have any questions about Chinese language, either Cantonese or Mandarin, from any of your C-drama or Hong Kong drama watching, and we'd be happy to cover them. So until then, we'd like to all say 안녕히 계세요.
감사합니다. Thank you for listening to Afternoona Delight. Where can you find us outside the pod? Head on over to afternoonadelight.com. That's AFTERNOONADELIGHT.com. You'll find links to all our social media, our book recs, K-pop and K-skincare recs, and if you want even more Afternoona Delight, because really who doesn't, you can join our Patreon, where you can choose the patron level that's right for you. Join in daily K-drama conversations, listen to bonus podcast episodes just for patrons, and participate in our monthly live K-drama support group via Zoom. We can't wait for you to be a part of the community. Until next time, annyeong!